Okay.
All right. I have a fan on. Can you hear any buzzing or anything that
Nope.
I need to worry about? Okay.
Okay, as soon as this logs in, we'll go ahead and start.
Okay.
Just woke up from a nap. I was like, I'm tired, and I started getting a headache after I saw that movie. I was like, I gotta lay down and go to sleep. Okay, here we go. 5, 4, 3, 2. Welcome, everyone, to Outpost Unknown's first review in quite a while. Today, we're going to talk about Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, directed by James Mangold, who is famous for directing Logan, a very well-loved, very well-loved superhero film. This is the 5th Indiana Jones movie, and it is allegedly the final one that's going to star Harrison Ford. Of course, Indiana Jones, beloved 80s action hero, started with Raiders of the Lost Ark, then went to Temple of Doom, Last Crusade. We don't like to talk about Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, although maybe there will be some comparisons to that when we talk about Dial of Destiny. So before we jump into the review, and I turn it over to Ploticus to try to make his way through this plot,
God.
How much affinity do you have for Indiana Jones? Did you love this series growing up? Is that why you went to the movies to go see this for kind of like nostalgia purposes, or is this just something you're like, I kind of like it, all right, and I just went because I wanted to do something today?
No, I love Indiana Jones. It was one of my favorite film series growing up. I know I'm in the minority on this, but Temple of Doom, of all of the original trilogy, is one of my favorite movies. Not my favorite Indiana Jones movie, favorite movies out of all of the movies in existence. I fucking love Temple of Doom, love the original trilogy. Kingdom of the Crystal Skull exists. But, I was excited to see what they could do with a Part 5.
Okay. Like you, I loved Indiana Jones as a kid. I also love Temple of Doom. I think I like Raiders of the Lost Ark better, but I always love Temple of Doom. It's like the black sheep of the original trilogy. But I love it, like chilled monkey brains. I love it. Just everything about it.
Every part of Temple of Doom is great.
Oh, I agree.
Every part.
I love it. I absolutely love it as well. And I remember back in like 2008 or something is when Kingdom of the Crystal Skull came out, and I remember being deeply disappointed by that movie, and there's a reason why, which I'll get into when we talk about Dial of Destiny. But let's just get into it. What is this about?
Okay, well, a de-aged Harrison Ford and his good buddy Basil, they're back in the 1940s. They're trying to stop the Nazis from stealing a train full of just ancient treasures. Specifically, they want the Lance of Longinus, I don't know how to pronounce it. The Spear of Destiny, the Spear... Yeah, whatever Matt just said. The Spear of Destiny. They want the Spear of Destiny, the spear that stabbed Christ, because Hitler believes that it has magic powers. Indiana Jones and Mads Mikkelsen, or whatever his name is, who is the main evil Nazi in this movie, they both immediately figure out that it's bogus. And so they're not interested anymore. Harrison Ford wants to save the train of treasure, but Mads says, if you really want to impress Hitler, give him this. Give him the Dial of Destiny. And so they've discovered half of the Dial of Destiny. Indiana Jones and his buddy Basil fight the Nazis, and they come away successful with the Dial of Destiny. We then cut ahead to 1969, where an absolutely miserable, beat-to-shit Indiana Jones is just kind of meandering through life. He's just retiring at a job that he doesn't care. He's still teaching, but he just retired from teaching at a school where no one gives a shit about him. Like, he got some present for his retirement. He immediately gave it away to, like, a homeless person on the street. His students are not interested in his lessons anymore. Mutt is dead. his entire life just imploded off screen. His son Mutt died, which destroyed his marriage to Marion, and that is where we pick up the story of Mr. Indiana Jones. He is teaching his final lesson, and who should show up to his final lesson but his goddaughter, who is Basil's actual daughter. They reconnect, and she is very interested in the dial, and it turns out Indiana Jones saved it for all these years. It's been in storage somewhere, despite telling Basil that he was going to destroy it because it drove Basil crazy. Who else wants the dial in this movie? Well, Helena, the goddaughter, wants it because it turns out she is a black market, like, antiquities dealer.
She's an awful human being.
She is. The CIA wants it because they want to, I think, capture her. I don't think they wanted the dial. I think they wanted her. But unfortunately for everyone, the CIA has been infiltrated by Nazis, specifically Mads Mikkelsen, who was one of the Nazis. Yeah, he was brought over after the end of World War II because he was smart enough to be useful to the United States, and so he was part of the program to put a man on the moon. But now that he's kind of paid his debt to America, he wants to get back to his Nazian ways, and he needs the Dial of Destiny to do that. And so they go on this pretty standard Indiana Jones globe-trotting mission to find the dial. And the goal of Mads Mikkelsen is not to go back in time and kill Ike or Winston Churchill or any of the Allied leaders. He is specifically going back in time to kill Hitler because he believes that Hitler did a good job in the beginning, propping up the Nazis, but then his military, intelligence was lacking. So he holds Hitler personally responsible for losing the war. And so he's going to go back in time to kill Hitler and presumably take his place or maybe promote his Nazi buddies. I didn't actually know what his plan was once he killed Hitler, but he's going to kill Hitler.
I think he thought that when Hitler was dead, that there would no longer be any stupid decisions made, like attacking the Soviet Union in the middle of winter, and then somebody would have just stepped up and I guess made smart decisions.
Yeah. I wasn't sure. Like, was he planning on stepping up, or was he just going to kill Hitler and step out of the way, assuming that the Nazis would then win? I don't know, but his plan was to go back in time and kill Hitler. And so they get the Dial of Destiny, and the way the dial works is it's time travel, which I love me some time travel, Matt. But it's time travel. But it's not a time machine. It doesn't open a time portal or anything. The way they set it up is time portals are just a naturally occurring part of the Indiana Jones universe now. And so Archimedes, who created the dial, he noticed that the sun, the moon, the stars, the planets, their orbits weren't what they should have been. Their orbits were funky, and that led him to believe that something shitty is going on with time, and then he used math to prove it.
Yeah, they do. It's funny because I was just telling you, in the chat room or whenever last time we were talking about Indiana Jones before I saw this movie, I was like, the Indiana Jones works best when it's grounded in reality and there's a supernatural element to it. But they go out of their way in this movie to be like, it's not a supernatural thing, everybody. It's math. It's science.
They use math to time travel. Regardless, just go along for the ride. Time travel exists. The dial is not a time machine. Rather, it's more like a compass that points you to the nearest time portal. How exactly you control where you're supposed to be going, I don't know. But the twist at the end is the dial only points you towards a portal that takes you back to the 200s BC in the Siege of Syracuse, because Archimedes created the dial with the hopes that one day someone from the future would come back in time and help them beat the Romans. Nazis die. Indiana Jones just quits. But he gets punched in the face by Helena and brought back to the future, where he reunites with Marion. Happy ending? ?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and give my thoughts on this movie. there is very little that I liked about this movie. I thought, now I hated Crystal Skull. I know you might have a slightly different take on it, but I hated
it's fine.
it.
It's fine.
I hated it, and I realized when I was watching this movie why I don't like Crystal Skull and I don't like Dial of Destiny. And I mentioned this in the chat room today. It's like there's no joy in these movies. The original trilogy traded on joy and wonder and how fun it was to see Indiana Jones discover these various things. And when there is an action fight scene where it's Indiana Jones and he's on the front hood of the fucking truck and it's like 20 minutes of him on a practical car that's moving, trying to doing all these awesome things that we were like, wow, man, that is awesome. Look at this guy, this average looking dude who can do all this stuff. It was so cool. I actually compared a scene in this movie to Temple of Doom. In Temple of Doom, there's this wonderful, wonderful moment. It's the bug scene, right? When they have all these bugs all over them and everything like that. In this movie, there's a similar scene, but it's like CG. What's the word I'm looking for? Sort of like the centipedes. It's like CG centipedes, and they're running around and stuff. And I'm comparing like those types of scenes to one another because ostensibly when they made this movie, they're like, oh, well, that's a classic scene in Indiana Jones. Let's put bugs all over the female, and she'll freak out, and it'll be creepy because there's creepy crawlies all over. But it's all CG. There is an extended chase sequence. I don't know what type of vehicle you would call that they're driving around in the streets of Tunisia on in this, but the whole thing is CGI, and I was sat there watching this. I'm like, there's no joy or wonder to this. This is like somebody creating something who's like, you know what? All these things that people loved about the original Indiana Jones stuff, the things that made them work, the things that Steven Spielberg was so great at being able to show on screen and made people love this. We're going to do it, but we're going to do it in this sort of we're not going to take any time, energy, or effort to really do it. We're just going to create it all on a computer. And the opening scene where it was like the de-age completely took me out of it. There are lots of shots in that where it's like, oh, it's quite obvious that there's a de-aging thing going on there.
You know what threw me off the most about the de-aging is
his voice?
Like they made him... No, they made him look younger than he did in any of the other movies. They went too far back.
Yeah, I thought his voice, I was like, this is 80-year-old Harrison Ford talking. He didn't sound like this in the original trilogy. I was like, why didn't they do something with his voice? He still sounds a little gruffy dude. Now, I liked that opening 20 minutes. I really liked the concept of it. But again, it's so dark. It's so muddy. It's so difficult to see what's going on. I go back to Raiders of the Lost Ark when all these action scenes were taking place in broad daylight. You could see all this cool stuff happening. And in this, they're on trains, and it's clearly created in a computer, and it just looks so weird. Joy and wonder is what made those first three work, and it just did not work for me here. The other thing I did not like about this movie is it was so fucking long. 2.5 hours long. I went back and looked at the running times of the original Indiana Jones trilogy, and even Kingdom of Crystal Skull. The longest movie was 2 hours and 8 minutes with credits. There's another half an hour tacked onto this where I'm just like, none of this needs to be in here. And my fiance was falling asleep during it because it was just boring. Again, joy and wonder gets you through a lot of this stuff where you might be like, okay, I just wanted this thing to end. I did not care about this villain. I thought this villain kind of sucked. I love Mads Mikkelsen. Love him. Go watch Hannibal, anybody who wants to see great Mads Mikkelsen. This villain was just not memorable at all. I thought what was the girl's name? Hannah, Claire, whatever her name was. Helena. She was just a terrible person. She was just an awful, terrible person. And I was like, I watch these Indiana Jones movies because I want to see Indy with good people, right? And all the previous ones, Indiana Jones was... Sala,
What the
yeah.
fuck did they do to Sala in this movie?
He was there for cameo, basically like, hey, you remember, you like Sala, right? We're gonna throw him in there. And there's a moment in this movie where Sala, he takes Indiana Jones to the airport, and he's like, Indy, I got my passport. I was sitting there like, please let Sala be in the rest of this movie. I want to see
Yes.
this guy help Indiana
Absolutely.
Jones, and they fucking didn't do it.
It's
And
like if you remember the first Iron Man movie, and probably not a lot of people do at this point. We see Robert Downey Jr. get in his Iron Man suit and fly away, and then we see Rhodey, and he looks at the silver armor, and he looks at it, and you're thinking, oh, cool, he's gonna be fucking War Machine, and he's like, next time, and he just walks away from the armor. It's like we teased you with something cool, and then we didn't give it to you.
exactly. So yeah, I thought it was overly long, bad CG. I'm struggling to find anything I thought was good about it. I like the idea that they went back to Nazis, and I mean it's always good to see Nazis get shot and killed. My problem is like all of Mads Mikkelsen's like henchmen didn't feel like Nazis to me. Like they were Nazis, but I was like,
Well, they were modern Nazis, which are just white dudes.
well, yeah, but you know, I want those like classic Nazi castings, like someone who's got a Nazi-looking face, right? You don't get that from these guys. I thought they were just like general like mercenary dudes or something. I didn't realize they were actually Nazis until they put on Nazi uniforms at the very end of the movie, and I was like, oh, okay, I guess they are Nazis. You don't really see the Nazis doing anything bad other than at the very beginning, like we're trying to steal all this stuff, and it's like I want to hate my Nazis, like in Raiders of the Lost Ark. I fucking hated those Nazis, and I wanted Indiana Jones to kill them. And I loved when the Ark opens up and melts their faces. That's awesome. You don't get any of that really here. Even Mads Mikkelsen, he gets, spoiler alert, they go out in this dumb way. It's like, okay, the plane crashes. Wow. Okay. So I didn't feel like there was any creativity or ingenuity or joy or wonder in this movie. I didn't really like any of it. I'll toss it to you. What did you think?
This is like a tale of, there's like two halves to this movie. One half is like the adventure portion of it, like the quest for the dial. I like that. I mean it's not as good as I'm very sad I threw away this hand. But it's not nearly as good as anything from the original trilogy. But I liked it. I thought it was pretty like classic Indiana Jones goes on a globe-trotting adventure to find a MacGuffin. I was cool with all of that. I hated what they did to Indiana Jones himself. Like, say what you want about Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. At the end of it, he had an unambiguously happy ending. He was the dean of his college. He married the love of his life. He discovered that he had a son, and he seemed very on board with parenting this child. Like, I get that no one likes Shia LaBeouf, no one liked the Mutt character, but Indiana Jones in the movie liked that character. They take all of that away from him for no particular reason. You find out that Mutt joined the army just to piss off Indiana Jones. Well, then he got deployed and killed, so his son is dead. The death of Mutt destroyed Indiana Jones and Marion's marriage. And so, like, one of the first things you see when we return to 1969 is, like, divorce papers between the two. He's working at a college that he doesn't care about. I think of, like, all of the scenes in the previous movies where we actually see him teach, and the students are, like, enthralled with his stories of history. The students in this movie, like, treat him as a joke, could not give less of a shit about him. So this movie destroys Indiana Jones's life for no reason, because no part of this story is dependent on Indiana Jones having a shitty life. Like, he doesn't go off to search for the dial because he's got nothing going for him at home. He's not going off on one last adventure. He specifically says, I am only doing this because the fucking Nazis framed me for murder and I need to catch them to clear my name. That could have happened with his family intact. It's just, this movie is just depressing and hateful towards Indiana Jones for no reason, and I fucking hate that. It's like the same thing they did with Luke. It's like it's just like he's just bitter for I don't know, because that's how someone wanted to write the script.
Yeah,
it's like
it actually reminded me.
No part of the story is dependent on Indiana Jones' life being ruined, but they ruin it anyway, and I hated it.
Yeah, it actually reminded me less of Luke, but what they did with Han Solo in The Force Awakens. You know, at the end of Return of the Jedi, Han Solo's with Princess Leia and stuff. By the time you get to Force Awakens, Han and Princess Leia are no longer together. Their relationship is broken up.
Their kid may as well be dead.
Yeah, their kid is essentially dead to them, right? And, you know, he's just out. Basically, he's just kind of... He goes from this great, iconic hero to... I'm just a lowly smuggler again, trying to get my way. I've lost the Millennium Falcon. I've lost everything. And, you know, I don't understand why Lucasfilm is taking these iconic classic heroes and deconstructing them to make them the things that people don't want them to be. Is it just to prop up other characters?
All fucking companies is suddenly against happy endings, at least if you're an old character that got their start at Lucasfilm.
It's weird.
I mean, like, if you gave Indiana Jones, if the movie started and Indiana Jones is loving life, how is the rest of the movie different? Like, it's not.
It's
like
not.
They just did this for the fuck of it, because someone decided that the heroes shouldn't get happy endings.
And again, another example of this, similar to your Luke analogy, is, you know, Indiana Jones established he's got this friend, right? He's the goddaughter of this guy's, you know, kid, which means he must be pretty close to Basil, right? And yet, when Basil wants him and needs him, he's like, no, you're crazy. And he does not help the dude at all. He lies to him. He's like, oh yeah, I'll destroy this. Does not destroy it for him. And I'm just kind of like, what are you doing? This is not what this character would do. It is not what this character would ever do. And I for the life of me, I cannot understand why decisions are made at Lucasfilm to take these characters that people love, and there's a reason why people loved Han Solo and Indiana Jones and Luke Skywalker. It's not just because, oh yeah, Mark Hamill and Harrison Ford, people liked them for that. It's because these characters grow over the course of these films. They go from a certain type of person all the way up to, you know, what people want to realize is, or think of as the idealized version of themselves. If they were put in this situation that, oh, okay, they overcome their problems and they became a better person. Nobody wants to go back and revisit these characters who have then regressed from the point where people identified with loving them so much. Like, oh man, I could see myself doing this. I could see myself becoming a better person, a better human being, and having a happy ending, so to speak. That's what the movies are all about. That's what these adventure movies are all about. And they don't do that. They take that away from these iconic characters, and there must be a reason. And I can't imagine it's just because, like, oh well, we're propping up other characters, right? I don't think the girl in this, they don't really set her up as the next Indiana Jones or anything like that. At least I didn't get that sense.
No, not
so
at all.
So it's not like setting her up.
She kind of like reunites Indy with Marion, and then she goes to get ice cream. Like, if they have plans for her, they are not discussed in this movie.
Yeah. And it's like, where if you're going to bring back, like, iconic characters, where's Short Round? Where's Short Round? Bring Short Round back, you know, to help out or something.
Marion, the love of his life, got done so fucking dirty. I read an interview with, is it Karen Allen? Is that her name?
Mm-hmm.
And she was talking about how, from what I was told, the early versions of the story had Marion in it a lot more, and then it got cut to what we got, which is basically just an extended cameo at the end.
Yeah, it just feels tacked on and forced. There's no interaction. Like, you could have made that ending scene a lot more powerful if there had been some sort of interaction with Indiana and her earlier on in the movie, but they don't do that. It's like, oh, don't forget, well, here's Sulla, here's Marion. We'll throw in a couple quick cameos for you, and there you go.
And then Indiana Jones quits. Like,
yep.
At the end of the movie, he's like, I'm just gonna stay here in the past. It's like there's nothing for me waiting back in that shitty future. I'm just gonna stay here. Like, if you give Indiana Jones a family, like, I imagine the scene where Indiana Jones goes back in time. He gets to be a part of the history that he has been studying and loving his entire life. And he has the choice to be a part of that. But then he's like, I really love my wife and son. I can't abandon them. It's like that spot would be so much more interesting than Indiana Jones just giving up, be like, yeah, future sucks. I'm just gonna sit here.
Yeah, for sure. And you could even have written a story that had Marion in it and maybe Mutt, if you could have got Shia LaBeouf back, where there's an end scene. And if you wanted to keep Indy making that choice, having that great moment with his wife and family, and maybe they all decide to stay back in the past, or you have that sort of emotional moment where he's got to tell them why it's so important to him that he has to make this choice and stuff. Nope, he just gets knocked out and and wakes back up in modern day.
What happens to Archimedes? Did it feel like there was another beat as long as the movie is? Like, I feel like they didn't really wrap up the Archimedes thing. Like, he's just standing there looking at Indiana Jones, holding the dial and the Nazis watch, and then Helena punches Indiana Jones in the face, and then the story goes back to the present. Like, did Archimedes try to get them to stay?
I don't think so, because Archimedes told them, like, hey, you were always going to meet me here. I think Archimedes was like, this is just how it plays out. I built this thing. This is how time plays out. And I think he just went off, and I don't remember if Archimedes died at the Battle of Syracuse or what. I don't know what happened to him, but yeah, I think that watch was just there when they found him in his tomb, and he was like, okay, yeah, I met the future people. They did help me kind of beat the Romans a little bit. There's a weird, strange moment where these planes are flying around. They're kind of shooting the Romans down a little bit, but I didn't get the sense that they wiped the Romans out by any means. So I don't really know.
Yeah, the Romans were fighting back against the dragons, which is what they thought the planes were. I don't know. It seemed like there was something missing with the interaction with Archimedes, and then Helena took that away from the movie.
Yeah. Again, this is a movie I will never watch again. In my head canon, Indiana Jones Stories ends with Part 3, going off into the sunset with his dad. That's it. That's the end. Crystal Skull and this, they don't exist for me. They're weird things I saw. It's an Elseworlds tale that makes no sense to me. The original trilogy is where my Indiana Jones stuff ends. So, final ratings and then a letter grade. How would you rate this, Steve?
I don't know. I came away liking the movie, but I can already tell it's a movie that the more I examine and contemplate, the less I like it. So I don't know. It's probably a fucking D. It's not the worst thing I've ever seen, but the more I think about what they did to Indy, the less I like the film.
Yeah, I'm gonna go right there with you. I'm gonna go D minus. I think that this is right up there with, like, I would not be, if someone were to say like Crystal Skull is better than this, I don't think I'd have a good argument against that. I mean, I wouldn't be able to be like,
Crystal Skull gave him a happy ending.
Yeah. I think I'd be like, okay, well, yeah. And so, I mean, but I hated that movie too. So they're right there at the bottom for me. But yeah, just, eesh. I don't know what Kathleen Kennedy's doing over there, man. I really don't know what she's doing.
Is this just what this director is known for? Like, I don't pay any attention to fucking directors, but like, knowing that, knowing now that he also made Logan, like, suddenly shit just makes sense, because Logan was another movie that I hated. Everybody else loves Logan, but like, I have no interest in watching my heroes just be fucking miserable, and that's the other movie that this guy gave me.
Yeah, I mean, he's done a lot of different stuff. I'm trying to think off the top of my head some of the stuff that he directed. Didn't he direct like Girl Interrupted and stuff like that from the 90s? I mean, he deals with a lot of sort of like yeah, miserable people. Like he trades in movies that deal with miserable people a lot of the time. So, but again, I mean, he's a good director. I don't think anyone would call him like a bad director or anything, but I'm thinking to myself, this is the wrong guy to
Keep
make an
your
Indiana Jones movie.
misery away from my heroes. Like I when I watched this movie, and now that I think about like the sequel trilogy for Star Wars, like I put myself back to like the mid 2000s when I had to stop reading comics because they were all stories about why it now sucks to be a superhero. Like Indiana Jones and Star Wars are now in whatever the film equivalent of that is. Like let the heroes be happy.
Do you
Otherwise, stay the
feel
fuck away.
do you feel like there is any like how do I want to phrase this? Any room or desire for a brand new like hey recast Indiana Jones and do a whole new Indiana Jones franchise or a television show kind of like Young Adventures of Indiana Jones? Do you feel like there's any appetite for people to see that, or do you think people are just kind of over it? Because this movie bombed at the box office. It cost $300 million to make this piece of shit,
Fucking ridiculous.
and it bombed horribly at the box office. So I don't think we're going to see another Indiana Jones movie for quite a long time. But just in general, would you be interested in seeing a new Indiana Jones with a please don't put Chris Pratt in the role, but somebody of that caliber, but like okay, brand new Indy, and we're going to go on new adventures.
I mean, I'd give it a shot. Like, it has to be a reboot. Like, I am someone who's kind of anti prequel. It's like I'm no longer interested in like a story that takes place after Last Crusade, but before Crystal Skull. Like, I know it happens down the line. Like, the story can't fix the ending that I saw from 30 years in Indiana
You
Jones'
just put
future.
it
I
out of
think
your head, Steve, like it never
no,
happened, and then it
no, it
fixes it
happened.
just
It's
fine.
canon. It's canon. It happened. Like, I think it's you reboot it. Like you've told the story of Harrison Ford, Indiana Jones from start to finish. You've got to start over at this point if you want to do something else with the franchise.
Yeah, and I think you could do something really cool where you reboot it, cast somebody, youngish in the role again, and you could have a lot to say about modern day stuff, like cast the Nazis again as the bad guys, but make it like it's Indiana Jones, make having more adventures with the Nazis down there, but really focus on why the Nazis were bad and why it's so such a good positive thing to fight back against Nazi type thinking and things of that nature while still making it sort of fun and palatable to a mass audience. I think you could still do that kind of stuff, but I love Harrison Ford, don't get me wrong, but his time has come and gone. His time has come and gone, and I would
Oh,
like
now
to
he's
see.
Thunderbolt Ross. He's joining the MCU.
I know. I know. Oh God. So yeah.
The Red Hulk. Imagine Red Hulk with Harrison Ford's old man voice, because that's what we're gonna get.
He's God. I don't know. The MCU direction's a completely separate show. We'll have a show at some point. Maybe a two Matts, one Steve. Where we're talking about what has happened to the MCU. I haven't even started watching Secret Invasion yet. I don't even think I'm going to. Like I don't even care. That's how much MCU is hurting right now. But so yeah, everyone, thanks. What did you think of Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny? Got a cool title. I love the title of it for sure. Where did you like it? Did you think that we're on base with how kind of bad the bad parts of this movie were? Let us know down in the comments. And with that, we'll see you next time on Transmissions from the Outpost. Okay, and cut.